I'm a huge advocate for proxies in EDH, especially since many of the staples in the format have such a high price tag, and making a deck in general can be very expensive. And today, I wanted to go over the most popular arguments against proxies, and add my own counterpoints, as well as talk about the benefits of proxies afterwards. But before we can do that, there's a few things we need to go over. First, what is a proxy? A proxy is a fake card meant to represent a real one, and typically players use proxies as a cheaper alternative than buying real cards. And there's nothing wrong with owning real cards. There's many benefits to having real cards, such as buying, selling, trading, and investing in them. You know, things you can't really do with proxies, because proxies are just really meant for gameplay itself. And there's many places that you can obtain proxies, like Proxy Goddess, Proxy Queen. You can find some on Etsy, or even just print them off yourself. And I would definitely be forthcoming about having proxies in your deck when having your Rule 0 discussion. And finally, the counterpoints that I'm going to make here and the benefits of these proxies that I'm going to talk about are merely my own philosophy, and it is completely fine if you have a different opinion. With that out of the way, let's get into this debate. So the arguments that I have here are generalizations of the most common things people say against proxies. So let's go over them now. If I had to work hard for my $500 deck, another player shouldn't be able to have the same experience with me for 50 bucks. That's not fair. First of all, I want to say that no one is saying that you don't work hard for your money. With that being said, you have the free will and choice to buy whatever it is you want with said money, whether that is a real card or a proxy card. And it's not fair to assume that everyone can afford these expensive cards and decks. You don't know what bills or responsibilities people have to attend to. I find it very ironic how people say that's not fair, when that's what proxies are striving to do, is to create a leveled playing field, now that everyone has access to all these powerful and expensive cards equally, regardless of price. Moving on to the next argument. Proxies are okay as long as you own at least one copy of the card. Of course, when getting into Magic, there's going to be some level of entry. If you wanted to buy a pre-constructed deck and play out of the box, it's going to run you anywhere from 20 to 50 bucks. However, I don't believe players should have to go through a paywall just to start proxying some of the more expensive cards. I believe it's okay to proxy cards you don't own under two conditions. One, that it's okay with your playgroup, and two, that you're strictly using proxies for gameplay. Another common argument that I see is playing with proxy cards is actively not supporting the game and is a form of counterfeit. These players aren't supporting Wizards or LGS stores. Okay, so a lot to unpack with this one. First, saying that proxies are counterfeit. The only time a proxy is counterfeit is if you are trying to sell it or trade it as a real card and you don't tell anybody that it's a proxy. Then yeah, that's counterfeit. However, if you have your Rule 0 discussion like you should be, and you tell people, hey, I have some proxies in my deck, they're this, that, and the other thing, and everybody knows that these cards are fucking proxies, then no, that's not counterfeit. Everybody knows these cards are proxies. And you're just using it for gameplay. You're not trying to sell it or trade it. Let's move on to the second half of this argument. These players aren't supporting Wizards or local game stores. Okay, so I can go down to my local game store and they may not even have the card that I'm looking for. But besides that, just because I proxy a specific card doesn't mean I'm not going to support Wizards or a local game store. There's many other avenues I can take to support these businesses, that I do take to support these businesses, such as buying cards, packs, sleeves, deck boxes, entering a draft, you name it. So to say that I'm not supporting these businesses just by proxying some cards is completely false to me. Now let's go over some benefits for using proxies. Number one, and probably the biggest reason why people use proxies, it's a cheaper alternative compared to using their expensive counterpart. You'll be saving a ton of money proxying some of the more expensive cards for your deck. And proxies greatly help players make a solid deck who are running on a budget. Now that players have access to all these powerful cards equally, regardless of price. Which leads to my next point, equal access to all cards. Now everyone has access to all cards equally regardless of price or power level. So now the level of entry for some of the more expensive decks is a lot more player friendly, now that players don't have to go through a massive paywall when building a deck. And finally, using proxies makes the game a true test of skill. Proxies really help even out the playing field now that everyone has access to these powerful and expensive cards. So that way the game becomes a true test of skill and not whoever spends more money on cards has a clear advantage. Because at the end of the day, you should not be winning games because you spent more money on cards. You should be winning games because you made a series of strategic plays and politics against your opponents.